Is going to college for music really worth it? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about music school and going to college for music and is it worth it? So I went to college for 4 years for music and graduated with a bachelor's degree in fine arts in music. I went to Binghamton University in New York State. It was a great college, a great experience, but was it worth it? And if you're thinking about going to music school, maybe I can talk about some things that will help you make that decision and guide you along the way based on my experiences. Now, I went to school a long time ago. I graduated music school in 1992, so that was decades ago. I'm getting up there in age. I'm in my mid 50s. You know, I just turned 55. I can't drive 55, okay? And so times were different then, but music school still is very, very similar. And what I'm going to talk about today are my experiences I had in music school, what it was like, a little bit of my background, what I got out of it, talk about expenses and, you know, job security and different things like that. You know, there's a lot of stuff to consider. There's a lot of pressure on people when you go to college and you get out and, you know, what am I going to do, especially in today's times, right, today's day and age. And my youngest son just graduated from music school, so I've got firsthand experience with music school in today's times as well, so I can relay some of that information. All right, so I'm going to try to not make this video go on too long and ramble. So anyway, my story. You know, I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, not a lot of opportunities. I was in 5th and 6th grade band. I stopped playing in band until 9th grade. In 9th grade, I was already playing some guitar, and the music teachers in the school asked me to play bass in the high school band. They needed a bass player, so we had an electric bass rather than an upright, and they really thought I was talented as a musician and wanted to get me engaged in the music program. So I wound up playing bass in the high school band, and I wound up singing in chorus, which was a really rewarding experience. I started listening heavily to the Beatles music and, of course, 80s pop, 80s metal, 80s new wave, as well as a lot of songs from the 60s. My brothers and sisters are 18 to 20 years older than me, and I inherited a lot of their records. So I had influences from the 60s and 70s and then my generation. So it was a great time to be alive regarding CDs, albums, cassettes, even 8-tracks as an early child. But I'm kind of digressing. I'm trying to give you the big picture. So I was really inspired musically. I've always listened to music, but transitioning to guitar really was something that really struck a nerve with me, and I realized that's what I wanted to do. I feel like if you're a musician and you want to go to music school, you know that music is really something that it kind of chooses you. It doesn't, something that you don't really choose. It finds you and you're passionate about it. It's almost like having, for me anyway, it was like having OCD. It was something I had to always work on, and I was fascinated in creating sound. I bought my first 4-track multi-track recorder when I was a freshman in college, or I should say maybe senior year of high school. I started wanting to record songs. I wanted to be Paul McCartney, and some days I wanted to be John Lennon. I couldn't be both, right? I would flip-flop. So anyway, I got accepted to Berklee School of Music at the end of high school. I went into kind of a depressed state because I lost my dad. My parents are significantly older than me, but my dad died at the age of 65 in 1987, and it was extremely sad, but I pushed those feelings away from me, and it made me made me delve into music even deeper. I think sometimes when you deal with pain or you're dealing with issues, something of that nature, sometimes it drives you to have laser focus on one thing, which can be really good, but it can also be, it can be bad too. But I got accepted to Berklee School of Music. I sent them a demo, and my mom, who was, I didn't realize it at the time, but we were pretty broke. My mom had to take up another job, and she was doing her best to support me in my music, and she was the best person in the world. She passed a few years ago, and not a day goes by where I don't think about her. But she sat me down one day and said, "Marty, you shouldn't go to Berklee. You're going to owe $120,000, $130,000 after you get out of school." And that was, the late 80s. And I was like, I don't care, I'm going to be a rock and roll star. I thought, I was 18. I thought, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to be a rock star. That's peanuts. Steve Vai went to Berklee. I'm going to be like Steve Vai, and little did I know Steve went for like 2 semesters or something and wanted to go work with Zappa. I found that out many years later. But so Mom talked me out of going to Berklee, which was a very smart thing. I never would have survived in Berklee. I would have had to move to Massachusetts, and I was not prepared to be away from home and out of state. And I just don't think I would have cut it. But even if I would have been in a mountain of debt. So that's one thing we're going to talk about, is the expense of music. So I wanted to go into Binghamton University, which is a state school in New York. It's an excellent college. They're mostly known for business and medicine and that sort of thing, but they have a wonderful music program. So I went to Binghamton, and I was kind of, I was really bummed. I was depressed going to school, but I grew to love Binghamton. Shortly after I started going there, my sense of pride, be true to your school attitude hit me really hard. And so I went to Binghamton University, and growing up in a small town and being only 18, you think you know everything about life, and you think you have everything figured out, but you don't. Most of us don't anyway. And music school introduced me to all of the arts, theater and jazz and music history and ethnic music and all the different types of people that went to that university. The diversity was wonderful. Diversity really helps us. It's so important, working together and learning from each other and realizing that what you thought was the way it should be is the only way, musically, or even, there were so many different religions and different perspectives, and it was a bitter pill to swallow at first because it was so different, but it was a wonderful thing. So going to college and going to the music school, that was definitely worth it. I learned valuable life lessons in those 4 years living in a dorm. I lived in a dorm for 4 years. We had Marriott for our food court. We had 4 different dormitory sections throughout the campus. And I lived in one called Hinman. If anyone knows about Binghamton, I was in the Hinman College, and I was in those dorms. It was a co-ed dorm, which was nice. You get to mingle with girls, and I was probably the most unlucky, unsuccessful guy in the world related to women in college. But I was so focused on my guitar and music that girls were kind of like an afterthought. 4 years of that just developed me as a person. Whether you go to school for math or science or underwater basket weaving, whatever, the experiences that you gain, and especially if you're not ready to go out into the world, college really helps you learn and adapt to circumstances in life and working with people and growing in responsibilities. It's sort of like the cocoon before you are released into the wild world out there. So music school, Berklee was going to cost me about $30,000 a year, I believe, to go there. No financial aid. I was in state, New York State, so I couldn't get any financial aid. They were going to have me working a 40-hour-a-week job on campus. It was set. It was ready to go, and I declined at the last minute. And I wound up spending about $4,000 a year at Binghamton, which now it's about $15,000 a year, I think, to go there. I could be wrong, but it's a lot more expensive. But I had financial aid. My mom was broke, so we got lots of financial aid. Times were different back then. Of course, that much money then is would be double that now, I'm sure. But when I got out of college, my entire student loans that I owed, my Pell Grants and everything, was less than Sally Mae. I think I owed maybe $1,800 or $2,200, and my mom had helped pay for my semesters. You know, say we owe $2,000 a semester or $1,800 or whatever. She was paying that, and I didn't realize it. You know, I wasn't paying attention to it. I was just kind of thinking, no, this is all free. All these papers I'm signing for loans, it's just, you know, going to forget about it. Then when I got out of school, I had, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 in student loans, and many of you are probably thinking, God, I've got so much. You know, you're so fortunate. And as a graduation present, my mom paid that small loan off, so I didn't have any debt when I got out of college. And that's something to think about. Is music school worth it? Yes, it's worth it. I'm going to talk about what you learn and how you apply it and how it has enriched my life as a musician. I think it was the best thing, one of the best, most important things I've done in my life regarding music. But if you're going to go to school for music and pay $30,000, $40,000 a year, 60, 80. I mean, I think Berklee now is like $80,000 and Juilliard is 70 or something like that. I mean, there's really, really a lot of money invested in. Let's be honest, getting a career in music is tough. Getting a career in general is difficult, but we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. But is it worth it to pay that much money for music school? I don't think so. I think it's important to try to get as many scholarships and grants and different things that you can get. Research before you go, or if your child is going to go, research all the options that you can get, especially when it comes to scholarships and things like that. There's a lot of things that states offer. And going to a local school, your child may not want to go to something local because he thinks it's not as prestigious, but he's going to learn the same fundamental skills of music as he would going somewhere else. Now, granted, if you graduate from Juilliard or Berklee, which graduation levels in some of those schools aren't that great, you know, that's a great resume bullet point. But unless you're going into opera or you're going to be a symphonic violinist or a trumpet player or something of that nature, you're studying theory and that sort of thing. My music professor at Binghamton University, Bob Hansen was his name. He was an old professor, and he was very funny, very smart, and he was awesome. And one day, him and I were talking, and I said, this is early on in my first semester, I said, I got into Berklee School of Music. I actually could be at Berklee right now because I was still a little bit, had a chip on my shoulder about going to a state school, and I got accepted at Berklee. And he said, you did the smartest thing you could have done, is go here. He goes, our music curriculum and learning theory and that sort of thing, it's the same no matter where you learn it. The notes don't change. He said, yeah, they have a lot more concerts in their faculty and their studios and things like that, and that's why it's expensive. But he goes, you're going to get the same core fundamental skills as an undergrad. He says, as a graduate, picking your grad school, if you're going to go to grad school and try to elevate your career outside of that as a musician, in education or playing symphonically or something, your grad school, it's very important to pick that and go to something with some clout. He did give me that advice, but he made me feel a lot better about my decision by saying, you're going to learn the same thing here as you would there. And, you know, there's so much truth to that. And thankfully, I listened to my mom about the tuition, and I listened to Bob Hansen was a mentor for me for several years in theory. I took theory for 4 semesters. Now, going to college for music, you know, a lot of people say, I don't need music theory and I don't need this. You really don't, but you do. What it has done for me is, now in the late 80s, early 90s, there were, you know, music was, I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Cars and ZZ Top and Pink Floyd and all that stuff. And then when I was in school, as my age, my generation of music, you know, metal was popular. You had the Scorpions and Van Halen and Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and Eric Johnson, and I was really inspired by those guys. Stevie Ray Vaughan and U2 and even the pop music of that day, you know, Madonna and Paula Abdul, and there was some really lame pop music, but I loved it all. And music theory and composition allowed me to analyze pop music. I would go back and dissect Def Leppard Hysteria at a different level. I could sit there and I would work out the chords, and I had taken guitar lessons for about 3 years until I went to college. Then I stopped taking guitar lessons because they didn't teach electric guitar at Binghamton. They taught classical, which I really wasn't that interested in. But music theory and living in a dorm room and just being able to study music as well as your other curriculum. When you're in music school, you got to take other stuff, you know, so whether it's psychology or sciences or maths and all these different things, you got to take other things. You just can't do music. But I was in my dorm and I was recording on my 4-track, and I was playing in the university jazz ensemble. So I had time to study the college material and really delve into it and learn it, and learn about part writing and counterpoint and orchestration. I learned how to part write for orchestra, and I learned composition skills and all these tools of the trade that the masters use. You know, your Bach, your Beethoven, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, Debussy, Verdi, Giuseppe Verdi, or as Bob Hansen would say, Joe Green. I never was a master at that, but I learned it and I did very well with it in college, but I wasn't passionate. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn that stuff. I wanted to learn how to manipulate sound and music and notes and relate it to what I wanted to do with my life. Because in my opinion, I still was going to be Paul McCartney when I graduated, or, you know, a rock star. So I would listen to Hysteria and all these different albums, and I would dissect it harmonically. And when I would record my own music, I would use what I was learning in theory, and I would apply it to harmonically what was going on currently in pop and rock. And also I was developing my own style. We also had a campus pub, and they did gigs. We did gigs there. They had bands that could play gigs at the campus pub, and in Binghamton you could go play gigs around town. And so I had a band called Eclipse, which was named after Pink Floyd, a Pink Floyd song. And so playing in a band helped me. I was studying music. I was living the dream. So I guess that's one way college was worth it. When you're in college and you're studying, you don't have all these external issues you have as an adult that weigh you down. Kids, job, car payments, insurance, house, coworkers, career, you know, everything. You can focus at the task at hand, which is enriching yourself. And in the meantime, you're developing your social skills and your independence and how you work with others and how you navigate through life on a much smaller scale. And yeah, it's definitely worth it. I just don't think it would have been worth it had I left there with a mountain of debt. So it was interesting. In music theory class, you know, we did, music theory is often misunderstood, that there are rules on how you should write music, and it's not. It shows you how the masters of the Baroque and classical and Romantic era, and even, you know, modern music, you know, from the 2000s, how all that was written. And it teaches you things like what's a perfect fourth, what's a tritone, what are parallel fifths, parallel fourths, leading tones, dominant sevens. Many people on the channel ask me, how do you know what this chord is, or how do you know what this, you know, what notes to play in this scale or this mode? Well, that's how. And you know, you just don't. College gives you the chance to learn that stuff from a technical standpoint. But when you go back to your dorm room, or you outside of college as an artist, you have to dip your paintbrush in those skills, and that's where you learn how to paint. and you make it your own. It doesn't mean you have to write something the way that music theory dictates it. Theory is just teaching you, think of it like ingredients. If you're a chef, Gordon Ramsay is a fantastic chef, and he went to culinary school, and he's studied under many, many great chefs before he was able to do his own thing. But he knows how to use all the different spices and ingredients and different vegetables and different meats and different pastas and things to create flavors. And in his mind, he can think, oh, I bet you if I did this with this recipe, if I add this and this, I'll make this, this will taste great because this will counteract this. And that's kind of like how music theory and learning music is. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be great at it, and I'm not saying I know everything. I'm no Rick Beato. But I know my way around music to some degree, right? I should anyway at this point in my life. But I guess what I'm saying is it gives you kind of an edge on learning. It's kind of like you're learning the ways of the Force. It's like when Luke Skywalker went to Dagobah, right? Eventually, he would probably learn the Force, but it may take him a lot longer to get there and maybe not be quite as refined. But it's what you do with it afterwards that really makes a difference. Now, when I moved to Nashville in 1992 after I graduated, and I had a harsh reality in my senior year. Everyone was either going to go to grad school or they had jobs lined up for accounting positions or different things, and they were like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I didn't really think about it. I just kind of thought, well, when I graduate, I'm going to hatch and I'm going to be whatever. I'm going to be this great musician. Didn't really think about what I was going to do, which is kind of stupid, but that was me back in those days. So I moved to Nashville. I actually had a job in Ithaca, New York, working for Sears. I hate to admit that, but Sears relocated me to Nashville, and they just put me in a Sears location down in this area, and it enabled me to have a job and to get started. And it was like Axl Rose getting off the bus in LA, welcome to the jungle. That's kind of what I felt like when I came to Nashville. And it was very exciting because soon after I arrived here, Garth Brooks and Billy Ray Cyrus and Shania Twain and Faith Hill and Tim McGraw and all these big, big stars, Alan Jackson, all that stuff hit. And Nashville was quite small, but it really blossomed. And I was able to secure a lot of cool gigs and start playing with some people. And I did the whole, talk to publishers, talk to other songwriters, and I determined I just wanted to be a performer. And, we'll fast forward. This is going on too long, but many, many, many years later, I've cut about 7 records. They never really did anything other than we were able to tour in the United States and play hundreds and hundreds of shows. I've played in a very successful tribute band, and these bands made good money, and it enabled me to buy a lot of cool gear and see a lot of places and travel, and I've made tons of connections. I chart music for a church that plays pop music and pop and country. It's a cool church, but I chart music and direct a band, so to speak. I kind of help direct a band for the last 12 years, and music has taught me all the knowledge I gained in music allowed me to understand how to write charts, and the ear training in college helped me learn how to figure out stuff by listening to it and hearing certain intervals and the parts that were written in some of these studio sessions. All the recording that I've done has helped me to understand how to track instruments and how to orchestrate guitar parts in original bands, cover bands, that sort of thing. I also teach. One thing I didn't mention is when you get out of music school, it's very likely you're going to wind up having to take a regular job, and that's okay. My second Rick Beato reference, Rick had a video probably like a year ago. It was like, it's okay to say I'm a musician, and there's no harm in that. I think people have this misconception that because you're not making a living as a musician or your entire living as a musician that you're a failure. You are not a failure. If you are creating music, people enjoy it, you're enriching yourself, and you're creating positivity for the world, you are a success. Success can be measured in many different ways: financial, record sales, fan bases, followers, subscribers, you name it. But really the core of success is, did you bring something good? Did you use your talent for good? Did you provide something beneficial for this world? And are you leaving behind a legacy? My legacy I'm going to leave behind me are 7 or 8 albums, a couple of instrumental records, thousands of musical charts, all the people that I have played for, thousands of people I've played for throughout the country. It just it goes on and on. That's my legacy. My legacy is also my children. My youngest son just graduated from college, and I'll wrap this video up here because I'm going to bring it into current date. We're talking about something when I went to school many, many years ago, 3 decades ago. God, I'm getting old. But my youngest son went to music school and just graduated. And my oldest son is a producer in Nashville. He produces pop music, hip hop, rap, pop, rock, country, whatever you want to do. But he's awesome at it. He's got a great ear for music. He doesn't play an instrument, but he produces. But my youngest son, who just graduated from college, played trumpet from 5th grade up until current day. But he's really in love with guitar, and he plays guitar now, and he's dabbling in songwriting and playing music. So those two took separate paths. One went to music school, and he wound up going to a music school that costs about $15,000 to $16,000 a semester if you don't have scholarships and financial aid and that sort of thing. Well, he got a scholarship to go to this music school, and I would scrimp and save and fight fight to survive to pay a couple $1,000s a semester, and he would get out a couple $1,000s in loans. And so he just graduated, and he may be watching this. I'm not trying to provide too much information about you, but he's got maybe $16,000 in debt, which is like a used car, right? Not great to have that kind of debt, but it sure beats paying $60,000 or $80,000 a year for something. And he'll have that knocked out before long, and it's affordable and it's manageable. And he no longer wants to play trumpet. He wants to play guitar, and he wants to produce, and he wants to play gigs. And it looks like he's kind of taking the path that I'm doing. And I never would have thought that with today's technology, doing YouTube and making money off YouTube and would resonate. Like, I never thought that my channel would resonate. He's going to start doing YouTube at some point in the near future. So I wish him the best of luck with that. And my oldest son, who just started producing, he was always into computers and recording. And one common trait that I can identify between him and I is he's very obsessive, compulsive about his music and his production, to the point where he's a perfectionist, more so than I am. And both my sons are in their own way. And I think they'll both be more successful than I am. And I hope that, I'll wrap it up with this. Music school provided me with many, many things: outlook on life, a new perspective on people that I was working with, a vast knowledge of music that I was able to take those tools and apply throughout the last three and a half decades of my life. Yeah, I've worked full-time jobs, and I was in telecommunications forever. I managed people in telecommunications for over 2 decades, and I retired from that. So now all I do is I work with guitars. I work with a large guitar company, and I work with guitars, and I work on YouTube, and I teach, and I chart music. So everything I'm doing now is music related. So I never would have been able to do that if I didn't apply myself with the knowledge I gained from music school. I could have done it without music school, but what I paid for it and what I got out of it was far worth it. And I feel that my youngest son, with his little bit of debt and his drive, it's worth it for him. I've seen the growth and the potential that he's got. And as far as my oldest son, who didn't go to music school, I don't think going to music school really would have been, for his career in production, I don't think that would have been worth it. Being here in Nashville, he's interned and done a lot of stuff at some local studios, and a lot of that stuff you can learn online, and it's a lot of hands-on experience. So I guess it depends on what path you take with your musical career. Was going to music college worth it for me? Definitely it was. I've been able to survive. I've lived in Nashville for over 30 years. It has benefited me tenfold, emotionally, spiritually. It's very fulfilling, and I never plan on stopping. So hope that gives you a lot of insight as far as if you're thinking about going to music school, what to look forward to on a high level, and maybe it gives you food for thought on what some pitfalls to avoid, and realistic expectations afterwards. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. If you've gone to music school and regret it, put it in the comments. If you're thinking about going to music school and have questions, put them in the comments. I try to respond to just about everything. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for helping me make this YouTube channel a success so far, and I look forward to doing more videos for you in the future. Have a great day. Peace out.